The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before the UEDF patrol ship, Revenant. Commander Ethan Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the glowing red distress beacon flashing on the holographic display. The signal had been looping for hours, coming from Darren 4, a remote mining colony on the edge of human-controlled space. Something wasn't right. Still no response. Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm. Lieutenant Sarah Kane, the ship's communications officer, shook her head. "No, sir. We've sent multiple hails. The colony is silent." Ethan exchanged a glance with his second-in-command, Sergeant Miles Carter. "A colony with over 10,000 workers doesn't just go dark," Carter muttered. Ethan agreed. "Take us in, but stay sharp. Something feels off." The Revenant descended through the thin, dust-choked atmosphere of Darren 4. From above, the colony looked intact, no signs of explosions, no visible damage. But there were no lights, no movement. The entire settlement was dead silent. "Gear up," Ethan ordered. "We're going in." Ghost Town. The landing ramp hissed as it lowered, revealing a landscape of abandoned buildings and eerie stillness. Ethan, Carter, and a team of 5 soldiers stepped onto the cracked pavement, weapons raised. A cold wind howled through the empty streets, carrying the scent of rust and decay. "Where is everyone?" One of the soldiers, Private Jonas Reeves, whispered. They moved cautiously, passing by personal belongings scattered on the ground. Dropped tools, overturned carts, half-eaten meals left untouched. "Something made them leave in a hurry," Sarah murmured. Then they reached the main control hub, the heart of the colony. Its massive steel doors stood wide open, as if inviting them inside. Carter frowned. "This doesn't feel like a pirate raid. No bodies, no signs of struggle." Ethan didn't like it either. "Stay alert. Let's check the security logs." A terrifying discovery. Inside, the control hub was in disarray. Chairs overturned, consoles sparking, screens flashing red warnings. Sarah rushed to the nearest terminal and began accessing the logs. Ethan scanned the room and noticed something odd. Deep scratch marks on the walls. Not from tools, from claws. "Got it," Sarah said, pulling up the last security footage. The grainy video played on the main screen. At first, it showed workers going about their routine. Then, panic. The colonists ran for their lives, screaming, pushing each other aside. Shadows moved in the background, figures too fast to be human. Then the video cut to black. The last frame remained frozen on the screen. A group of terrified colonists pressed against a wall, looking up at something off-camera. And then, in the final second, a massive, clawed hand reached toward them. A deep silence fell over the room. "What the hell was that?" Carter muttered. Before anyone could answer, Sarah gasped. "Commander, you need to see this." She had accessed encrypted files, records hidden deep in the system. Ethan leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he read. Subject transport logs. Human cargo. Destination. Unknown. Status. Processed. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Processed," Carter repeated. "What does that mean?" Sarah's fingers trembled as she opened another file. It was a list of names, thousands of them, all labeled sold. Ethan clenched his fists. This wasn't an attack. This was a collection. "They weren't killed," Carter whispered. "They were taken." The enemy reveals itself. A sudden metallic screech echoed through the halls. The soldiers spun around, rifles raised. From the darkness beyond the control room, something moved, a low, guttural, clicking sound filling the air. Then they saw it. A tall, skeletal figure, its skin a mix of metal and flesh, emerged from the shadows, its glowing yellow eyes locked onto them, and its elongated fingers flexed, razor-sharp claws gleaming. Sarah gasped. "That's the thing from the video." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Open fire." Gunfire erupted, lighting up the room in bursts of energy. The creature dodged with unnatural speed, twisting and lunging toward them. It slashed at Reeves, tearing through his armor. The soldier screamed, blood spraying as he collapsed. Carter aimed his rifle and fired a direct hit to its chest, but the creature barely flinched. Ethan grabbed a plasma grenade from his belt. "Move." He hurled it at the creature. The explosion engulfed it in flames, and the thing shrieked in agony, its metallic limbs twitching violently before it finally collapsed. Breathing heavily, Ethan turned to his team. Reeves was dead, but the others were still standing. "What the hell was that thing?" Carter demanded. Sarah swallowed hard. "It's not just one. There are more of them." Ethan looked back at the security feed, at the lists of missing people, and at the monstrous creature lying at their feet. It all made sense now. This wasn't just random abductions. This was a slave operation, and humans were the merchandise. Ethan's jaw tightened. "We're shutting this down. Every last one of them." The war had just become personal. The air inside the control hub was thick with the stench of burnt flesh and melted metal. The creature's body still twitched slightly. Its charred remains sprawled across the floor. Ethan Voss stepped closer, gripping his rifle tightly as he studied the corpse. It was something not entirely organic, not entirely machine, a fusion of both. "We need to move," Carter said, his voice tense. "If there's one, there are more." Sarah was already at the console, her fingers flying across the keys. "I've accessed more files," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is bigger than we thought. Thousands of humans have been taken from different colonies." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Where are they being sent?" Sarah pointed at a set of coordinates flashing on the screen. A station in deep space, outside human-controlled territory. The realization hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. "This isn't just a colony raid," he said. "This is a full-scale slave operation. Escape and pursuit." Before they could process the gravity of the situation, an alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed violently. "They know we're here," Carter growled, raising his weapon. Sarah's eyes widened. "I tripped a silent alarm when I accessed the files." Ethan didn't waste a second. "We're leaving. Now." They moved quickly, exiting the control hub. The moment they stepped outside, movement flickered in the shadows of the colony. Then came the clicking sounds, dozens of them. More creatures were coming. "Contact, left side." Reeves shouted, but before he could react, something leaped from a rooftop, its claws slashing across his chest. He collapsed with a strangled cry. The squad opened fire, plasma rounds lighting up the dark streets. The creatures moved fast, their metallic limbs twisting unnaturally as they closed the distance. "Back to the ship," Ethan ordered. They ran, dodging and firing as more alien slavers emerged from the ruined buildings. Carter tossed a grenade, blowing apart a group of them. But still, they kept coming. The Revenant was waiting on the landing pad, its engines roaring to life. The ship's turrets activated, spraying energy fire at the approaching enemies. Ethan and his team sprinted up the ramp, the ship's eye sealing the doors the moment they were inside. "Get us out of here," Ethan shouted. The pilot, Lieutenant Harris, didn't need to be told twice. Punching it. The Revenant lifted off, thrusters blazing, breaking through the atmosphere just as more enemy ships arrived in orbit. "Incoming hostiles," Harris warned. Ethan turned to Sarah. "That station. We're going after it." Sarah hesitated. "But we barely made it out alive." "We don't have a choice," Ethan interrupted. His voice was like steel. "They took our people. We're taking the fight to them." Carter nodded. "Time to hunt these bastards down." The Revenant turned toward the unknown coordinates, toward the slavers' hidden stronghold. This was no longer just a rescue mission. It was a declaration of war. The Revenant sliced through the vast darkness of space, its engines burning hot as it followed the coordinates Sarah had uncovered. The crew was silent, the weight of their discovery settling over them like a storm cloud. Humanity wasn't just at war. They had been prey all along. Ethan Voss stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the console as the distant outline of a massive space station appeared on the main screen. It loomed in the void like a monstrous predator, its metal hull covered in spikes and jagged plating, its structure far larger than expected. "That's not a slaver outpost," Carter muttered. "That's a goddamn fortress." Sarah's fingers danced over the console. "Scanning now." "Oh no." Her voice trembled. Ethan turned to her. "What is it?" Sarah swallowed hard. "I'm detecting thousands of life signs. Human. They're in containment cells across multiple sectors." Ethan's jaw clenched. "We found them." But before anyone could respond, the ship's warning sirens blared. "Incoming vessels," Harris shouted. "They've spotted us." The main screen flashed as enemy fighters poured out of the station, their sleek, black hulls cutting through the void. "Brace for combat," Ethan barked. "The battle begins." The Revenant's turrets roared to life, spewing plasma fire as the alien fighters closed in. Explosions erupted in space, ships twisting and spiraling as they were torn apart. "Shields at 60%. Sarah called out. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "We need to get inside that station." Harris nodded. "I see a landing bay, big enough to fit us in." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we fly straight into the enemy base. You got a better idea." Ethan shot back. Carter smirked. "Fine, just don't get us killed." The Revenant dove toward the landing bay, dodging enemy fire as explosions shook the ship. The docking shield flickered as they forced their way through, barely making it inside before it sealed shut behind them. "We're in," Harris breathed. Ethan grabbed his rifle. "Good. Now let's raise some hell." Inside the lion's den. The moment the ramp lowered, the team rushed out, weapons raised. The docking bay was massive, lined with rows of cages, each one holding malnourished, terrified humans. The captives gasped at the sight of their rescuers. Humans. One of them whispered in disbelief. "We're getting you out of here," Ethan promised. Before they could begin freeing the prisoners, alarm klaxons wailed, and heavy doors slammed shut. Armed guards poured in, their weapons trained on the team. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "You should not have come here." The crew turned to see a towering alien figure approaching, a high-ranking slaver, draped in black armor with glowing red eyes. "You think you can challenge us?" The creature sneered. "Humans exist to serve, and now you will join them." Ethan smirked and raised his rifle. "Yeah, try me." With that, the battle for the prisoners began. The docking bay erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts and bullets tore through the air as Ethan and his team opened fire. The slaver guards, towering and heavily armored, advanced with brutal efficiency, their weapons unleashing bursts of violet energy. Ethan ducked behind a crate, his pulse racing. He fired back, his rifle punching through the chitinous armor of one of the creatures, sending it crashing to the ground. Carter rushed forward, tossing a grenade. The explosion ripped through the enemy line, sending alien bodies hurtling into the air. "That's how we do it," he shouted. Sarah was at the cages, her hands flying over a control panel. "I'm trying to unlock the cells," she called out. "Just hold them off a little longer." The prisoners gripped the bars, their eyes wide with desperation. "Please, get us out." More slavers stormed into the bay, and the team was pinned down. Then the massive armored leader, the one who had taunted them earlier, stepped forward. "You fight well," the alien growled. "But your resistance is meaningless." With a gesture, a shockwave pulsed from his armor, sending Ethan and Carter crashing to the floor. The slaver aimed his weapon at Ethan's chest. "You will die." A loud hiss interrupted him. The cell doors unlocked all at once. The prisoners take up arms. The leader barely had time to turn before hundreds of humans rushed out of their cages. Their faces were twisted with fury, their eyes burning with the fire of long-awaited revenge. One prisoner, a burly man covered in scars, grabbed a fallen weapon and blasted a slaver soldier in the face. Another prisoner, A woman with cybernetic implants leaped onto a guard's back, tearing through its armor with sharpened fingers. Within moments, the battle had shifted. Ethan scrambled to his feet, grinning. "You were saying." He taunted the leader. The slavers snarled and lunged at him. Ethan sidestepped, bringing his rifle up and firing point blank into its chest. The alien roared in pain, stumbling back. Carter tossed Ethan a spare shock grenade. "Finish him." Without hesitation, Ethan threw the grenade. It exploded against the slaver's armor, sending cracks of blue energy coursing through its body. The alien collapsed, its red eyes flickering before going dark. The station falls. With their leader dead, the remaining slavers panicked. They turned to flee, but the freed prisoners were relentless. Blasts echoed through the station as the slavers were hunted down, one by one. Sarah, panting, turned to Ethan. "We did it. We actually did it." He nodded. "This station is ours now." The scared prisoner stepped forward. "And we're not done yet." He pointed to a holographic map displaying several more slave stations across the sector. Ethan stared at the map, his mind racing. "This isn't just a prison," he said. "It's the beginning of a revolution." Carter smirked. "Then let's start breaking chains." The freed prisoners cheered, their voices shaking the walls of the station. This was no longer just about survival. This was humanity's uprising. The station shuddered as explosions rocked its lower levels. Fires raged through the corridors, alarms blaring like the dying screams of the slaver empire. The prisoners, now freedom fighters, stormed through the facility, hunting down the remaining guards. Ethan Voss stood at the command console, his eyes locked onto the holographic map displaying the network of slave stations across the sector. "This isn't just one prison," he muttered. "It's part of an entire supply chain." Sarah, still breathing heavily from the battle, nodded. "And if we don't move fast, the slavers will send reinforcements. We need to hit them before they regroup." Carter smirked, loading another round into his rifle. "Good. I was hoping for a real war." The scared prisoner, now their unofficial leader, stepped forward. "We have enough ships docked here to launch a full-scale attack on their operations." His voice was rough, hardened by years of captivity and torture. Ethan met his gaze. "Then we take the fight to them." The prisoners roared in approval. Hijacking the fleet. The docking bay was a graveyard of abandoned slaver ships. Some were still intact, others bore the scars of battle, their hulls riddled with burn marks and plasma blasts. Ethan and his team moved quickly, activating controls, preparing the ships for launch. Sarah tapped into the station's communications. "I've blocked all outgoing distress signals," she announced. "They don't know we've taken over." Carter grinned. "Then let's keep it that way." Within minutes, the hijacked fleet powered up, their engines glowing against the darkness of space. Ethan stood at the front of the main warship's bridge, watching as the first wave of liberated humans boarded the vessels. "This is it," he said. "No more running. No more hiding. We take back what's ours." The scared prisoner nodded. For every human they stole, for every life they destroyed. The fleet turned toward the next target. The slavers wouldn't see them coming. The first strike. As the hijacked warships jumped through hyperspace, the crew braced for battle. The next target was a processing station, where newly captured humans were sorted, branded, and sold. The mere thought of it boiled Ethan's blood. "We're dropping in hard and fast," Harris called from the pilot's seat. "ETA, 2 minutes." Sarah scanned the station's defenses. "They have 3 patrol ships and an orbital defense grid." Ethan cracked his knuckles. "Then we hit them before they even know what's happening." Carter smirked. "Time to burn their whole operation to the ground." Hell unleashed. The fleet emerged from hyperspace, engines roaring as they descended upon the station. The slaver guards barely had time to react before blazing plasma fire rained down from above. Explosions ripped through the patrol ships. One spiraled out of control, crashing into the station's docking bay in a fiery explosion. Ethan and his team dropped onto the surface, leading a fury-fueled charge into the station's interior. The slavers tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and terrified. The captives, once prisoners, grabbed weapons and joined the fight, their rage fueling every shot. "No mercy," someone screamed. The slaver empire had been untouchable for centuries. But today, humanity was taking back the stars. The station burned. Fires raged through the metal corridors, alarms howled like dying beasts, and the once powerful slavers were running for their lives. Humanity had turned the tide. Ethan stormed through the wreckage, his rifle raised as he and his team cut down the last pockets of resistance. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head, but he barely flinched. His focus was on the mission. Sarah's voice crackled in his earpiece. "We've secured the holding cells. Hundreds of captives are being evacuated to our ships." "Good," Ethan replied, stepping over the body of a fallen slaver. He reloaded his weapon and scanned the darkened corridor ahead. "We're not done yet." Carter jogged up beside him, grinning. "You hear that screaming? That's the sound of justice." The sound in question came from the central command chamber, where the station's overseer was being dragged out of his bunker by free prisoners. The creature was massive, its armor cracked, its face twisted in rage and fear. It had spent its life selling humans like livestock, and now those same humans were dragging it toward its end. You can't do this." The slaver shrieked, its voice high and desperate. "I am a lord of the Dominion. You are nothing but a former prisoner." A woman with hollow eyes and scars from years of torment stepped forward. Without a word, she raised a stolen weapon and pulled the trigger. The overseer's body crumpled. Its reign of terror ended in an instant. Silence followed. Then cheers erupted. "No more chains." Ethan turned to the freed captives. "It's over. This station is ours now." The scared prisoner, the one who had led the uprising, stepped forward. This wasn't just a prison. It was a command hub for their entire trade operation. Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the station's data logs. "He's right. We have the location of every major slaver stronghold across the sector." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then we don't stop here." Carter grinned. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Ethan smirked. "Oh yeah." He turned to the crowd of freed prisoners. "We take the fight all the way to their homeworld." The roar of approval shook the walls. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was the fall of the masters. The stars burned bright as the stolen fleet of warships emerged from hyperspace, engines roaring toward the heart of the slaver empire. Ethan stood on the bridge of the lead battleship, his hands clenched into fists. Below them, the slaver homeworld loomed, a planet of towering black citadels, glowing energy fields, and countless prison compounds. "This is where it ends," he muttered. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying over the ship's controls. "They know we're here. Their planetary defenses are locking onto us." Carter smirked, loading a fresh power cell into his rifle. "Let them try." A transmission crackled through the speakers, a deep, guttural voice filled with rage and desperation. "You dare attack our sacred world. You are nothing. You are cattle, and cattle do not make war." Ethan leaned forward, his expression cold as steel. "Then let's show them," he said, "that humanity isn't cattle." He turned to the fleet. "All ships, attack. The war for freedom." The sky erupted in fire. Human warships rained destruction upon the slaver strongholds, blasting through energy shields and fortified defenses. Anti-air cannons fired back, filling the void with plasma bolts and flinging debris. Drop pods streaked through the atmosphere, carrying warriors hungry for vengeance. The moment Ethan's boots hit the ground, he was already firing, cutting down slaver troops as they scrambled to defend their crumbling empire. Prisoners, thousands of them, burst from their cells, grabbing weapons and joining the fight. "You thought you could own us," one shouted, slamming a rifle butt into a slaver's skull. Not anymore. Carter tore through enemy lines, laughing as explosions ripped apart barricades. This is the best day of my life. Sarah fought her way into the control tower, hacking into the slaver network. I shut down their planetary shield, she yelled. They're wide open. Ethan grinned. Then let's end this. The last stand. The Slaver King, a towering beast in ornate battle armor, stood at the steps of his burning palace. His red eyes blazed with fury as he watched his empire fall apart. You, humans, he snarled, gripping a massive energy blade. You will never be free. Ethan stepped forward, raising his weapon. We already are. The king charged, swinging his blade in a wide, glowing arc. Ethan dodged, rolled, and fired 3 precise shots, each piercing the beast's chest. The king staggered. Carter finished it with a rocket to the face. Boom! The slaver collapsed, his reign ending in a cloud of fire and smoke. The battlefield fell silent. Then, cheering. The dawn of a new era. With the slaver empire destroyed, humanity had won its freedom. The freed prisoners raised their weapons in triumph, chanting a single word: victory. Ethan looked at his team. Sarah, Carter, the countless survivors who had fought by his side. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about building a future, one where no human would ever be chained again. And as the sun rose over the ruins of the slaver world, Ethan knew one thing for certain: humanity would never be slaves again.